Hey there, in this video we're going to take a quick tour of Jupyter Lab, which I have opened up here and set to full screen. If you open it, you'll see it in your web browser, and there'll be the usual tabs up here at the top, which I just have hidden for the sake of this video. I've also zoomed in a bit just to make everything a bit bigger. So you'll notice we have two main areas we're looking at. On the right is where we're going to do most of our work, and we have some things we can open up, something called a notebook, which is where we're going to spend most of our time, and some other kinds of things we can open up. And on the left we have this sidebar here, which can be closed by clicking. And what you probably see is a bunch of files, probably in some kind of home directory, literally home if you're on Linux, or if you're on Windows, it would be c:/users/your username. Now another thing we could do here is I've already set up Jupyter to launch in a folder, instead of having all my files shown here for you to be peering at. And the way you can open up in a folder is take your terminal here and change to the directory you want to be in. So for example, right now in my home directory I have all this stuff, but let's say I wanted to open from say documents. What I would do here is I would change directories to documents, and then from there I would launch Jupyter Lab, and it's going to launch then from my documents, and my documents folder would be what's viewed here. Okay, so let's play around here with some of the basic features and keyboard shortcuts for Jupyter. Now, you don't have to memorize all of these because over here, this little palette looking thing is a list of all the commands, and we can search for a command we want, we can click on it, and if there is a keyboard shortcut, it'll be over here on the right. For example, the command we'll see here is to delete a cell, we type DD, delete the cell. So you don't really have to memorize these, you can look them up, and after a little while of using this, they do become second nature. All right, so I'm going to open up a new notebook, and if I look in my file manager here, you can see I've got this new untitled. I might want to rename it, in which case I could right click on it and choose rename, and let's call it hello. We'll do like a hello world, sort of very simple program. Now we'll learn how to write a lot more Python code throughout the course, but this is just to get us started. In the next tab down here we can see stuff that's running, so you can see that this hello .ipynb is running. Now, ipynb stands for IPython Notebook. These things used to be called IPython Notebooks. Since then they changed the name of the project to Jupyter, but haven't changed the file extension. So if we wanted to shut it down, meaning it's not running anymore, we can do that. Now, as far as like why does it say shut down instead of close? Well, the way this thing works is that in the background, your computer is running something called a server, which is where the actual Python interpreter lives, and then what you're looking at right now is the front end. So the way it works is you type a command here that you want to send to the server. The server runs the code and then sends the result back to what we're looking at. So let's try a very simple Python command here. One of the simplest we have is print, and we'll print hello. Okay, now I want to send this to the server so it runs and gives me some kind of result back. And there's two ways we can do that. We can use the keyboard shortcut Shift-Enter, or we can use Control-Enter. We could also click on this little play here, but it's kind of slow. It's a lot faster to use the keyboard. So let's start with hitting Control-Enter. Control-Enter runs the cell. And so that sends this code to the server runs Python, and then sends the result back here to the notebook to display. In case the output is hello. If I hit Control Enter, I just run that cell. If I want to advance to the next cell, I can hit Shift Enter. So you can see that ran and then advanced. Since there was only one cell to begin with, now there's a second one. So whenever you hit Shift Enter, it goes on and makes new cells. Okay, so let's well, I made a bunch of extra cells here, right? So let's say I don't want those anymore. I want to delete them. The way I can do that is I need to make sure that I am outside of the cell. You see, Jupyter is what's called a modal editor. It has two modes, a command mode and an edit mode. Right now, this is edit mode. And if I start typing, anything I type appears in the cell. To get out of that, I've got two options. I can click outside the cell, or I can hit the escape button. and that puts me into command mode. In command mode, if I say use my arrow keys, I can move from cell to cell. And more importantly, if I type, I'm typing commands that affect the cells. So I mentioned before the delete command is to type D twice, DD. If I type DD, I delete that cell. Whereas if I were in edit mode, I can get back into edit mode by clicking in the cell or by hitting enter. And then I type DD, well, that would be being typed into the cell because I'm in edit mode. Now, another thing kind of related to this is there are a couple different types of cell. We can see up here that this is a code cell. Anything I type in here becomes Python code. I have two other options, Markdown and Raw. We're pretty much never going to use Raw, but Markdown, you might not use it very much except maybe when you get to your final project, but I use it actually pretty extensively in a lot of the assignments. You can see when I changed this cell to Markdown, I lost that little bracket thing here. You see a little counter in here. So like I ran the cell 5 times, is why it says a 5 there. I don't have that anymore because this is not a Python cell anymore. It's not something that'll be sent to the server. Instead, it's the kind of cell where I can type things. So like if I type hello and then run this cell, you can see it's just the text hello. It's not Python code, it's just regular text. And we can do some formatting in here. So like if I surround things by asterisks, that's markdown syntax for making it italics. And you don't have to worry too much about like, well, what is all this markdown syntax? Because you won't be using it too much. However, if you do want to know more about it, up here you can click on help and you can see there's a bunch of references. One of those is a reference for Markdown, and it'll take you to a web page that describes your different options. Like another one we can do here is if we add a pound out front, it makes it a title. So we can have like a nice section in our notebook and then run some code there. Let's say that I accidentally change this into a Markdown cell. That could happen if I'm in command mode and I hit M for Markdown. Now, if I'm trying to run some kind of Python, well, it's not really Python anymore. It's just the literal text. How do I get it back? Well, I can go back up here, drop down to code, or I can hit the button Y to switch me back to code. I don't know why Y is the shortcut for code. I guess because C is for copy. All right, now let's say I have some stuff in here and I have like hello and print oh no, and I decide I want to add something in between those. What do I do then? So what I can do in that case is I can hit either A or B for above and below. So if I want to add a new cell below hello, I hit B, and it makes a new cell below. If I want to make a new cell above that one, I could hit A, and it'll make a cell above that. It'll help maybe here if I type something in there. So let's say I type 2 there. I hit B, you can see my new cell is below. Or if I'm back here and I hit A, you can see my new cell is above. Okay, now I've made a bunch of junky cells I don't really want, so let's just delete them with DD. Just type in D a whole bunch here. Okay, now what if, oops, I wanted that last one. I want to get it back. In that case, I can undo with Z, and that will undo what I just did. Or I could redo with Shift Z. Okay, so we're back to some stuff I wanted. Let's say this is amazing, and I want to copy this cell. Okay, I can do that by hitting C, and then make some empty cells. And let's say I want to go put it right underneath this cell. So then if I hit V, I'll paste it. Okay, so that's sort of our basics for working with the notebook. Let me show you some of the other features of Jupyter Lab and why this would be an advantage over just typing all our code in a regular text editor. Because you can't just run Python code type Python code in a text editor and just run it. So we saw the Markdown cells. That's nice because it lets us add documentation with our code and explain what things are about to happen. And you'll see that with most of your assignments, I can type the assignment text right with the code. Some other nice features we have here is we have a lot of introspective type features. So if I put my cursor here, well, let's delete some of this. Okay, let's say I've got as far as print, and I'm curious, what kind of commands do I have? What I can do is hit the tab, and there we go. It showed me that, oh, maybe you meant to type print. Or let's say I make some kind of variable like long variable equals 99. Okay, so I've run that cell, and now this is a variable that exists in Python's memory. And let's say I want to use it in some kind of calculation here, like I want to add 1 to it. So I can start typing that and then hit tab, and that will complete it for me. It's called tab complete. Now let's say I want to have, I'm not sure how print works. I've got a couple options to get some help on print. I can highlight somewhere in the middle of print with my cursor and hit Shift Tab, and you can see it opens up some documentation for me. Another feature we can do is we can hit Control I. That'll open up a whole window of help. In fact, we can get to that contextual help window from the launcher. So if I make a new launcher here, contextual help is an option down here as well. So you don't really have to use the shortcut. And right now it's blocking everything. That's not too helpful. But what I can do is I can hold down my mouse button here on the tab and I can drag it. I like to drag it over here to the right. A little bit more room. And now I have some space to show me help. It'll just automatically show me help for whatever is under my cursor. So this tells me about print. It shows me, for example, something you might not ever think about with print is you can control what the character is at the end of the line. By default, /n means a new line, but you might want to change it to something else, or you might want to change the separation between your arguments. So this can be really handy for us. Let's play a little bit more with our contextual help. Okay, so let's say I want to pull in a Python package called math, and don't worry too much about the Python syntax. We'll get to that. But let's say I want to know about what's in math. Okay, and this is telling me, hey, it gives me some mathematical functions. Okay, what kind of mathematical functions? So I can use my tab completion here. Let's say I start typing out sine. We have a math.sine. Oh, there we go, math.sine. And it tells me, yeah, it returns the sine, and it does it in radians instead of degrees. Okay, well, that's handy. Okay, so one more thing we might want to look at here is connecting a console to this notebook. We can go up here to File and New Console for Notebook. That's a little bit different than New Console. A New Console won't be connected to anything. But what a console is it's a place you can type Python code, and it's a little bit more temporary than in the notebook. You can see in the notebook, everything we've typed is just sort of left behind. In the console, it disappears when you close the console. So for example, over here, we typed long variable equals 99. So that should exist in this console as well. If I start typing in long variable and then hit tab, you can see it completes for me. And meanwhile, my contextual help is telling me that, hey, long variable is a variable of type integer. Its value is 99. Anyway, if I type that in and then hit Control Enter or Shift Enter, I guess Control Enter doesn't work. If I hit Shift Enter, then it prints its value right here. And if I come over here, hit up, that'll restore the last thing. And let's say I want to change long variable to 42. That's a good value. Hit Shift Enter. And I come back over into my notebook. And I say I want to print out long variable. It's changed it. It's 42 because these two things are connected to each other. So that can be handy if you want to play around a little bit. See what value something has without polluting your notebook. You can do that over here. One last thing to point out is you'll see these numbers here. I mentioned these before. They're in the order that the cell was run. So one thing you have to be careful with when using a notebook is that the commands are not top to bottom. They're in the order you've run them. So good style for a notebook is to write your notebook so that it's designed to run from top to bottom. But you can kind of confuse yourself if you start running code out of order. So let's make a simple example here. I'll just up a bit, most of this stuff. Okay, so let's say we start with x equals 1, and then print x, which should print 1, and then let's change x to 1 more than itself. So x equals x plus 1 should change it to 2. Okay, now if I go back and run this command again, now x is 2. Okay, and that looks kind of confusing. Like if I saved this and opened it, what I'm going to see is x equals 1, print x2. What? Well, it's because in the meantime I've run things out of order. A way you can sort of protect yourself from this is come up here to the kernel menu and choose restart kernel and run all cells. This is a good thing to do when you think you're done, just to make sure everything actually makes sense when you run it top to bottom. So it just restarts and it's 1, 2, 3. Speaking of kernel, you can end up in situations where you've kind of locked things up. So like if I say here when x is less than 4, I don't know. I'll print something. And x is 2 right now, so it's always less than 4. If I start running this, it's just going to keep printing no forever, never. What do I do? So we've got a couple options here. We can go up here, the menu, and interrupt kernel, or you can also see we've got this command II. Okay, so with that cell highlighted, II stops the kernel. You can see that asterisk goes away. When you have an asterisk, it means the cell's running, and that means it's done. Now I've got like a billion lines of no's printed here. That's kind of a pain. One thing I can do there is I can, right here where it's blue, I can click that and it will hide my output, hide my sins there. I strongly suspect there's also a way to clear the output. I bet here if we go to the command palette and type in clear, there we go, clear outputs. There's no keyboard shortcut for it, but if I click on that, it erases the output from that cell. All right, well, I think that should be enough to get you started. You'll encounter some other shortcuts and whatnot as we go through the course. But altogether, this gives us something that's pretty clean. It has the advantage of combining code with the description of the code, has this nice contextual help. So this will be our main playground throughout the course. All right, see you later.